Operaatio Juoksukalja is, in English, it's running beer. It means the event when you are a teenager and you run into the store and steal a six-pack and run away. So in Finnish that has one word, it's called Juoksukalja. We thought that's a funny reference to going to the Russian market of all the stations and run away with one of their six-pack stations. It was actually completely different people who planned the operation, but I think we were reaching quite quickly the consensus that, the stations are becoming unanchorable, so we really want them. So let's figure out how. A couple of guys started to do wormhole burning just to collect money. And the rest of us, we just started planning fits that we could fly and how do we actually complete the whole operation. The whole idea for the operation was obviously from other people. They were wormhole FCs, and then one day they asked, we actually could use some 0-0 experience. Does anyone know how to be an FC there? And they're like, all right, I can help. And 3 weeks later, I was actually the main FC of the whole operation. Way before the operation started, we started burning other wormholes just to make a war chest. I think every week we burned 1 or 2 holes, and about 3 months later we had 130 billion ISK gathered and some ships already to move to zero with. When the day actually came that the operation really officially started, we approached Volta and asked if they would like to allow us to be their friends in their operation. They were already in 0-0 capturing areas, so we thought, what the hell, let's ask them and join. But in about 45 seconds, their main FC told us that they are not exactly interested of us, so we had to look friends from elsewhere. CS Alliance, which is a Czechoslovakian alliance, has been our friend for ages, and we have to, of course, ask them. It took quite a long time before we found some active English speaker from their ranks, but when we found that, we actually got going pretty quickly. So in the end, we were Sutko, Arkley and CS Alliance together approaching Unspoken Alliance, which was already at 0-0 trying to capture Etherium Reach. They were at first not exactly friendly towards us, but after they lost one of their friends, suddenly there was a spot open and we were asked to fill that spot. Turned out it was the best thing that could happen to us. Unspoken Alliance was already allied with Suddenly Spaceships, another wormhole alliance, as well with the Laserhawks that we have been a couple of weeks prior to the operation really offensively fighting with. So it was weird to make alliance with people we know all were our... It was weird to make alliance with people that were our enemies a couple of weeks before. Technically, the Etherium Reach was divided between Unspoken Sovereignty and Protheans. Protheans are allies of XIX, and they are a Russian corporation that held pretty much the center and northeast of the whole region. Prothean Alliance was actually pretty good. They had several good FCs. They flied expensive ships and they were good at doing normal everyday PvP. Their form-ups in their CTAs were not as big as ours, but they still managed to hold quite long. Initially, when we started to move to 0-0, we didn't exactly know about the political environment around it. But after about a week, we quickly realized that there are other players involved. Skill involved were just a couple of jumps away to our east, and Snuff was to our west. So we were originally formed from Uemon. We learned quite quickly that we cannot do that because Snuff was living next door. That was a huge problem. Towards the end of the operation, Skill Yourself and Volta became a massive risk to us because they are not exactly our friends. About 2 months before the date where all the stations become unanchorable, we started to move material ready to a low sec near Etherium Reach. It was a good starting move, at least it made us prepared, and we got our scouts out to the Etherium Reach so we knew what's coming. But we quickly learned that we cannot leave from low sec. So we had to get a foothold in the area itself. We randomly decided one system and just went for it. After a couple of weeks we had everything moved there, and at that point we were already short on time on capturing the space and capturing the stations. It became really difficult to move any equipment to Etherium Reach because we were living just next to Snuff in LXQ and Pala. So we had to use jump freighters to go 7 jumps south to get around this problem. And we were completely unable to move capitals through any other means than wormholes. Etherium Reach was divided basically between Unspoken Alliance, suddenly spaceships, us Laserhawks, and Prothean holding the rest of it. That was in the beginning. It quickly became a situation where Prothean only held one pocket in the center of Etherium Reach, and we managed to take the rest of it. Suddenly Spaceships was holding pretty much the south in the middle. Unspoken Alliance was living in the southwest corner in Sahat. We held the northeast corner, and Laserhawks held the southeast corner. Protheans were living in the middle, which is a hub in the Etherium Reach that connects the whole region to other regions. Before the operation started, and before we actually attacked anything in 0-0, we had a meeting with the coalition, sort of to share the cake. It was decided that suddenly Spaceships wants to have the center pocket, and we should take the furthest away northeast corner with only 6 stations in it. It was really a problem for us because it was far from our low-sec home. Though, in the end, we made it happen. Early before the operation started, we of course had to decide what kind of doctrines we were going to fly. First, we decided that Tengus with railguns for 100 kilometers with ECM and logistics as Tengus would be a good doctrine. We bought all of them, we tried them once, and decided that that's not going to work. Also, the coalition was not flying anything compatible with that, so we had to change. So we bought Feroxes, 150 Feroxes, with support for it. We tried that a couple of times and realized that we have actually never flown a sniping doctrine before, ever, not one of us. So we sold that too. We tried cormorants, massive amount of cormorants, that didn't work. We tried moas and ospreys, that didn't exactly work. So we decided in the end to go with what the coalition was flying, which was Cerberuses and Gilas. So after we bought those and finally got them operational, things started to really roll, because then we had a ship we know how to fly, we had pilots for, and it turned out pretty well. We actually managed to do all of the major timers and objectives with those ships. Towards the end, however, there was starting to be a problem that we need to engage capitals, even supers and titans, so we had to bring in something bigger. Alliance, or the coalition, was using Macarials, so we had to be compatible with that, so we brought our own Macarials as well. We had capitals, about 25 of them, but we never had a situation where we could use them.
Except some bashing.
Except for some post-bashing. In the first days of the operation, we went and fought with all of the enemies, once with each, just to figure out what are they flying and how they're flying them. That didn't go exactly well. Quickly after changing the doctrines, we learned how to fight against them. There was a couple of big brawls against Lokis and Minokavas, and that worked quite well until they brought in a lot of dreads. We had a couple of big fights with Nightmares from Snuff, and we could not exactly break them ever. And then there was few brawls between different kind of parties who were flying some kitchen sink, and I think in all those cases we actually were victorious. The sovereignty was always a secondary object for us. We were there only for the stations. We captured the stations, and those were the timers that we really cared for, but accidentally, and because it was boring otherwise, we suddenly ended up having sovereignty as well. We didn't exactly know what to do with it. We installed some territory control units, had no idea why, and iHubs. Okay, let's test those out. And we started ratting. Ratting is really poor compared to Wormhole, so we gave up pretty quickly. After we had all the space, it actually got kind of quiet. I think we established ourselves as we're now living here, so I guess that's the point of sovereignty, and people stopped bothering us. Maybe they considered us to be with the other Wormholers, and that worked as an umbrella protection, but at that point we started to be more offensive against other. It was kind of fun to go to Malpais and Spire just to fuck with other people's plans, and for a couple of weeks we did exactly that. Prothean we're staging from BNX and the BNX pocket around it. It's a very confined space. There is only wormholes behind it where you can only go through BNX, so it's a nice area to hold. And from there you can actually engage anywhere in Etherium Reach. So they were having sort of the hill in the middle of the area. We tried many times to capture the iHubs and kill the posses and kill their Fortisar there. In the end, after fighting over BNX for several weeks, it was actually Snuff who took out the Prothean Fortisar and gave them the final blow. After the patch date, there was a 7-day period where all the shields of all the Fortisars were vulnerable around the clock. We are a national alliance, we cannot be online around the clock. And one thing that we were afraid of really happened. Skill yourself, maybe just one pilot came with supers and hit our Fortisar shields. We were looking at it, nothing we can do, really nothing we can do. So our fear really came true. Yeah, because we noticed the Skill Yourself actually was interested of our space. It was the first time they were attacking us at all. So we had to prepare for the potential outcome that they will attack all of our Fortisars or try capture them when we are extracting. So we started gathering the materials and all possible capitals we can get into one place. It was a massive movement of stuff. We never had any supers or titans because we don't have them, but we had enough to take a super or titan fleet, a small one.
How many droids?
I think at total we could have fielded 17 dreads with 10 faxes. So, after 7 days of complete vulnerability of this faction Fortisar, at one certain second they will just blop and turn into a box with the fit and the station in it. We had to figure out how to get that off the grid and make it safe as fast as possible. So we came up with a plan. All of the 6 we had were unanchoring at the very exact same second. We had teams in each system with certain specific ships that could do that scooping and safety very quickly. A couple of days earlier, we placed an Astrahus near every faction Fortisar, so we have a safe place to deliver to. These teams practiced a couple of days earlier how to make it very quickly, and I think we got it down to 43 seconds. So we had a plan that involved one certain minute on one certain day in which 45 seconds we are able to capture all the stations if there is no enemy presence on the grid. So we had to make absolutely certain that there was no one in our area when that second came. We worked really hard to make sure that no one knew when this moment is, and that when it comes there is no one looking at what's going on. And we succeeded in that. And when the day came, first 5 out of the 6 stations were supposed to meet their special minute. And then the servers crashed. We waited for 3 hours in comms, prepared to scoop immediately after the servers come back up. And they did come up, and we logged in and we tried to scoop the stations, and we were all super excited, super concentrated on the situation. And after about 2 minutes, the servers were up. We were looking at the grid and there's no Fortisar. It's gone. Where is it? There's only the fit in space in a box. So all about 100 people were looking at the box and it's not there. So, yeah. Sort of lucky. CCP had moved those into low sec because of the extended downtime on that day. So there were 5 out of 6 stations were safe without doing actually anything. Unlike the first 5, In the first 5 stations, of course, enemy could not do anything either, because they were just logging in and could not scramble a fleet together before we already were out of the grid. But the day after, when the last station came out, that was a completely different story. Enemies were in our pocket at all times. They were constantly neutrals, which we knew that were Sino alts, looking at situation. We were trying to pretend that we are not doing anything. So we held the gate camp 3 jumps away and tried to make it look like this is what we are gonna do today. So 3 specially selected people just in silence scooped the station up, and the operation became a success. After burning all the wormholes just to make the war chest happen, we had about 130 billion ISK that was to be used for this operation. All of it was used to buy ships, equipment and stations to protect everything. About 40% of it was lost. Majority of the losses were, of course, PvP ships. Second largest loss was jump freighter fuel, and third largest loss was actually the ratting ships that we did not know how to fly. Altogether, 60% of the ISK was returned to Jita and sold, and actually made partial profit from it. The faction 40s on an average 80 billion a piece. Turns out 320 billion on top of that. So we're looking at a profit margin about 500%, which is 380 billion. It is the same game. Even line is the same game everywhere. But if you have lived in Wormhole a long time and you don't know 0-0 mechanics, it's a completely new experience to go there and do that. The diplomatics, the having a coalition, having to join between different commons just to get the fleets to work together, controlling area and targeting objectives instead of just fighting on a wormhole. It's a completely different experience. I think the hardest part for those people who had not done it before was to understand the importance of the objective-based fighting. We don't need to win the fight, we just need the timer to reach 0 so that we win the timer. It was also the hardest part to make that sound interesting and keep up the activity levels throughout the operation. Towards the end, you clearly can see that it was hard for people to carry on the op. But having an end date, we knew that at some point this is gonna be over. I think it made the whole alliances closer to each other, and we learned a lot of new skills and tricks, and it gave us new tools to use in the future. And that was really enjoyable to see that in the end we were all super excited that we actually made the operation a success. In the beginning we had 2 choices. We either go completely alone and try capture 1 station, just being very offensive dicks, and just go there, fight it over and take it home. Or we will find these friends and make maybe a bigger claim on it. Turns out it was the best choice we could make, is to find a coalition and find Sisali to join us to do that. If we would not have done that, I don't think we would have succeeded as much as we did. 0-0 life seems to evolve around the blue donut. And if you embrace that, even for a couple of months, you can make a lot of things happen with 50 guys. Really want to thank CS Alliance for being such a cool people. Without them, I don't think we could have captured the whole constellation, which we did. Maybe a part of it, maybe none of it, but without them, we definitely would not have been the biggest part of our coalition. Gotta also thank Volta and Skill Yourself for not taking us out, because they definitely had the opportunity and ships to do so.